share thinking about and share memories of the two Davids, David Amery and David Kessel. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look at my paper because I can't remember it all. So that you know what to expect this evening. In the first half, the six of us who have organised the event will talk about the two Davids and read some of their work. And they are, in order of speaking, myself first, Stephen Watts, standing, for people who don't know him, Holly Samson, not Barney Samson, Sean Taylor, where's Sean gone? There you are, Barney Samson Ledger, sitting over there, and Chris Gutkind, there he is. So, and I'd like to thank you all for being part of this organising group. After we've all spoken, we'll have an interval to meet more, chat more, eat and drink, though you're welcome to go to the bar and buy as we go along. Some of us have already told, some of you have already told us you'd like to participate in the event. If anybody who hasn't yet said, you'd be very welcome to, whether it's memories, anecdotes, music, or reading one of the David's poems. Speak to Chris, stick your hand up, Chris. He will show himself later as well. But we'd love you to take part in the second half. It might be limited depending on how many people want to participate. There may not be long for everyone, a couple of minutes. Okay, now to remembering David and David. Both lived, worked and read their poetry in Tower Hamlets and beyond for many decades. They also both worked in health. David Kessel originally as a GP, David Amery as a social worker in housing and mental health. They both, of course, were very committed to supporting people with mental health issues, and both had issues, if very different, with their own mental health. They were friends, they shared ideas, and together with John Zammit, they set up Outsider Poets. I'm not going to talk more about David Kessel now, I'm going to talk about David Amery, and later Stephen will talk about David Kessel. So I met, very apt that these Joneses have just walked in. I met David 33 years ago. There's a clear picture in my head. I was working then at THAP, which became Eastside, as was Sean, and as were some other people who were here this evening, but don't quite feature in this story in the same way. It was a Friday evening. In fact, it was the 12th of June, 1992. And I collected my two children from Tower Hamlets Band. Barney was very excited because aged 8 he'd just been given his first trumpet. And Holly, 5 years old, was too young to be in the band. Sorry, the emotions keep coming up. We arrived at Tobacco Dock, Sean's Take It From Me book launch. His first book of poems, I think. David was there, helping at the bookstore. So as far as I'm concerned, it was all Sean's fault. Okay, David and his poetry. This might not be the right place to be saying this, but to be honest, I often found David's poems very difficult. Hard-hitting, angry, aggressive. Nothing wrong with that in itself, but I also often found them inaccessible. His day-to-day life rarely showed the vociferous eruptions of anger that permeated some of his poetry. He was mainstream and traditional, yet he was a rebel with little care for tradition. He was passionate and determined, not least about performance poetry, and railed against the poetry establishment's lack of interest in broader notions of the art. were ingrained in his performance. Where are the other props? The other box of interesting things? They must be somewhere. We'll bring them out. Masks and makeup, wigs and toys, and a cigarette dangling out of his mouth. Later came paint, painting his poems as he read them. And then a huge tangent when he produced As Real as Any, his penultimate book. Inspired by other poets' lives and journeys, his travels created a personal reflective book whose poems often lingered on longing, loss and endings. David was still completing his last book, Our World to Lose, when he received the horrendous diagnosis of terminal cancer on the 1st of October 2020. Finishing the book gave him a focus, and I'm certain he wasn't prepared to die until it was done. In his hospice room, I showed him the final proofread pages that I'd done, and en route home, took the book to the printer. Mission completed. It was done. And 36 hours later, on the 11th of December, sorry, David died. Our World to Lose is not currently available. As he insisted, very few should be printed, as not many people would be interested. We gave them out at his funeral. David would be amazed, if not shocked, to know that I am about to read his work. It's from his most personal book, As Real as Any, that I'm now going to read 2 poems. And unlike David, I will actually be reading them. Except that I've left my book behind. Holly, could you get it? Oh, okay, I've got it marked up. No, I need my copy. Sorry, wasting time here. You might have guessed I'm not very used to standing up in front of an audience. Thank you. So I'm sure I left some things out there that I was supposed to say, not least about books on the table. Unfortunately, we don't have any of David Kessel's because they're out of print. But there are a number here, not all, but a number of David Amery's. And if you haven't already got a copy, you're welcome to take one. Maybe we'll talk more about his last book later. In this book, As Real as Any, David used some maps and gave some explanations. And he wrote, "The opening of Great Expectations with the sudden appearance of Magwitch is based upon a real churchyard on the edge of the North Kent marshes. In the novel, it's a bleak and frightening place. These days, in summer, it's a lovely peaceful spot, though close to London, and easy to visit by train and bicycle. The poem is based on 2 visits, some years apart. And this is at Phipps Churchyard. Came once together, now alone. Came at the start, now at the finish. 25 years between, just vanished to nowhere. Children grown up and become adults. Older ones died and been buried. Children here, still lying with their hands in their pockets. Marshland to north, flat to the river. Farmland to south, with hills on the horizon. Between them, the line of the old Saxon shoreway. Midday, mid-year, in the middle of nowhere, as the tower of the church swings over its zenith. A sudden intrusion of past or of future. Arriving on cycles at the height of summer, at the peak of our planet's perihelion on our way from the station to the heronry. We stopped for a little rest from riding and parked up our bikes at the back of the churchyard and unpacked our picnic alongside the tombstones. Where we stretched ourselves out in the shade of a chestnut, we were screened by its leaves from the gold of a cornfield and hidden from view of passers-by on the roadway. And we lay there and lingered a little while longer, while bees and butterflies visited our bower, and hoverflies hung in splotches of sunlight. Our sense of time began to meander like snail tracks aimlessly snaking in silver over the flat surface of an ancient gravestone. And we made our own love among the beloveds, and it felt only natural to have sex in the open. And we never did make it as far as the heronry. The place is unchanged now, apart from 2 marbles, and a pile of grass cuttings going brown in our corner, with flowers discarded for some other loved ones. Came now alone, where once together, came at the end, as at the beginning. 25 years between, vanished to nowhere. So the second time I'm going to read at Walberswick. At Walberswick at dusk, with the last ferry gone, the only bridge back was a mile up the bank. So we set off to walk with the river on our right and the sky up ahead, split orange and black. The wind blowing in over fields to the south brought billowing clouds rolling over the light, and geese flying home as we crossed to turn back. The view to the east was totally dark. And so we went on, like reliving our lives as a 5-minute film with my head in your lap. When it finally broke, we were caught by the rain as we ran for our lives and were soaked to the skin. I'd like now to welcome Stephen Watts, who will talk about David Kessel and read some poems.